Alright, so today I want to talk about something a little bit different. A few days ago, a friend sent me a link to a Reddit thread which was from our MMORPG. And so what this post is about is Tower Fantasy, a gacha game, but the Warp server is taking the gacha out of the gacha game. The gacha space and mobile model has been just rapidly expanding, and so I find this situation to be extremely interesting. Meanwhile, the amount of people who want to play MMOs is just going down in my opinion, and there's really just a lot of reasons why that is. I knew Tower Fantasy started off pretty popular, but I didn't really know how far it fell to actually consider something like this. Tower Fantasy was one of the main games that was called like a Genshin-like or a Genshin clone. So now we get to take a look at projected gacha revenue. Dude, no surprises up top. We see Genshin, we see ZZZ down there, and Wuwa all in the top 10. These three are just largely considered the biggest three in this kind of, I guess, action game-ish mobile gacha game, whatever you want to call them. And then we scroll down, and then eventually give up, hit Control F, and look for Tower Fantasy. Well, it is still at least in the top 100. And honestly, even looking at the history of the game, it's actually not horrible. The game launched and stayed pretty consistent for a while, and now you're seeing a bit of a drop-off. But the thing about gacha games is really that this is normal. Like, to have big hypes when a new character or content releases, everybody wails on it, and then it goes down, and then the next waifu comes out and everybody rolls on that. So to my knowledge, the trends on this game is actually pretty normal. It's just that the number isn't high enough that they want to see. And so now they're trying to convert that gacha into an MMO, which I think is a wild attempt. It's a huge risk, but I absolutely love it. The anime aesthetic is just really normalized these days, and it's really lacking in MMOs. Most new games that come out are more so hyper-realistic, while the more popular games are more fantasy, stylized, just kind of older games even. Now, historically, I've never really had an interest in Genshin, Wuwa, ZZZ, or any of these other games that try to be in that similar kind of design, and that's because I just don't want to be taken for that gacha ride. But I will say, out of all those games, ZZZ looks the most interesting to me of the overall setting and character design. Also, I've seen some really good clips of the game too. Like, it does look interesting, I just do not want to support the gacha games. And since this Tower Fantasy Warp server is getting rid of all the gacha, all the monetization basically, and going just a full MMO route, I will absolutely try this out when it comes out in the West. Hopefully it comes out in the West. And additionally, something else they announced with it is that it is going to have seasonal resets, which is something I love to see. Resets, if done right, do wonders for an MMO because it creates an optimal point to jump into a game, which generally helps reduce the pressure players feel when jumping into a game that already exists with a pre-existing community. Because people have a lot of fear when it comes to trying to fit in with a community that has pre-existed for a long time. I think a good way to explain this is, right now it's 2025, but say you wanted to jump and play Super Smash Bros. And then you look at Super Smash Bros. Melee. Now that is a game that came out in 2001. If you play that right now as a new player in 2025, you are going to get shit stomped by all these people who are playing since 2001. Now, if a new Smash Bros. Came out tomorrow, the gap between you and them isn't going to be as huge as jumping into Melee 25 or 24 years later. Now, they are going to have a lot of transfer of skills and knowledge that is going to help them. It is going to give them a head up in the competition. However, you're going to be learning a lot about the game together as a community, and even more importantly is you're going to have a lot of other new players jumping into the game at the same time. You guys are going to be learning the game from scratch together. There's going to be a large entry community. Now, granted, I am comparing multiple releases of a series to a seasonal update in the game, but the logic still applies. And so my initial thought was, okay, it's seasonal and still an MMO, but it still comes from a gacha dev, so it's probably going to be extremely pay to win, right? Now, they say that nothing is going to have a cost as far as weapons, fashion, premium costumes, and mounts go. This is actually huge if true and if they actually stick to their word. Which then makes me wonder if this is going to be a monthly sub game, which we don't really see much of that in the modern day anymore. And if it really does stick to this route, I think it is going to have a lot of mass appeal, especially here in the West. In the West, we are definitely still the most resistant when it comes to pay to win. And that is again why we see such a big popularity in older games like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, and OSRS even. And while yes, you can RMT and technically pay to win that way, it is not something that is built into the game. I would be interested in seeing how World of Jade Dynasty is doing over there in China because they relaunched that game in the same kind of idea. They wanted to make it a monthly sub, non-pay to win game, but they definitely do have like Bible cosmetics. I heard there was like a gigantic mount that people could see from like across the town. which I am still hit or miss. Like if I had to do any monetization, I definitely would rather be cosmetics, but there is also an argument against cosmetics and just overall wardrobes, fashion, whatever you want to call them, transmogs. When everybody is wearing the same premium slutmog or whatever is going on these days, it devalues and hides kind of what you've earned in game. Which is another reason why I like their choice of making everything earnable in game, though if it's just like an easy login for some of the things people love, everybody's still going to end up looking the same in town, so that might not be that great. I really hope they go with a more classic MMO feel with this game. And the important parts of that to me is that I do not want any fatigue systems. I do not want it to be content that I can only run a limited amount of time a day. I don't want it to be a alt-focused game because of that. As much as I actually have enjoyed playing alts in other games, I don't want it to feel like it's part of the game. I want it to be something that I want to do for something that I like doing. To me, alt design is very detrimental to a game because it just speedruns fatigue for a lot of players. And my hope with this game is that actually you won't need a single alt at all. I'm hoping that it is all class-based because it does say that you unlock and get different weapons, and I assume that's what's going to change your skill set. And that's something I really enjoyed about Phantasy Star is that everything I can do can be done on a single character. Same thing with Final Fantasy, it's all the class or job system. And the popular MMOs I was talking about earlier, Final Fantasy, World of Warcraft, OSRS, these are games that you can just grind infinitely. Yes, things like raids do have a limit every week, but there is still so many other things that you can just spam for progression just to do on these characters. It's not, hey, I ran my daily chores and now I can't do anything on the game. I would say as of right now, my biggest concern for the game is the fact that it is going to be a PC and mobile game. While phone technology has gotten a lot better, it still lowers the bar. It lowers the standard for MMOs that are cross-platform. Usually that means you don't really have that many skills to run off. You had to use a lot of your screen space for those skills along with your movement, which can affect the complexity of a class or character. Crystal Vatland had a pretty good solution of putting a skill slot as a opener and ender, so you could use the second one while the first one's on cooldown. But that's still only a partial solution because then you have to think about your skills in a set. You can't really just have the same experience of freedom. Also, the overall UI design of that game was like a travesty. It was such a mess and every other button brought you to the cash shop. But I do still think they could make a decent game with the mobile limitations. Now, as a side note, there is something I've always been pretty jealous of gacha games for as of recently, which is these characters having their own unique walk, run, and idle animations. This is something that adds a lot of personality to a character without really even doing too much. Recently, my timeline has been flooded with the ZZZ character that walks around on a scooter and just shows off her feet all the time for some reason. Of course, that is to monetize and sell the character. But I think that little bit of personality goes a long way in a character, a class, or a race. It's not like this is something that has been extinct from MMOs, it is just something you don't see too often. Now, we do still have the Ayayas from Lost Ark and Terra who actually have their own animations. Also, Terra had the Castnic Rays, which had their own running animation that was really different, and also they mounted their horses differently. They sat on the side. World of Warcraft has the elves that have just the jump and twirl animations that aren't really anything huge. They don't affect the gameplay, but it's just something people like to do. PSO 2 is also kind of the peak of it all, where it has custom idle animations, run, walk, jump. But this is something I'm seeing more and more in gacha games, and something I just wish I saw more and more in MMOs. As far as Tower Fantasy goes, I don't know if it exists in there, but I do hope it does. But anyways, as long as they stay on this track to keep it as a more non-whaling, non-gacha MMO, I will absolutely play it when it launches. My hope for MMOs is that this game and also World of Jade Dynasty both come out to the West and they absolutely pop off. I wanted to make huge waves and have other developers start to look at MMOs differently. Because right now, MMO design is a lot of the same and it's just not really working that well. A lot of it ends up being like an early cash grab right into end of service or near end of service. I would love to see another MMO come out that has a huge amount of staying power like World of Warcraft still has today. But that is Tower Fantasy Warped, something I would have never guessed to ever exist, and I am happy to be wrong, and I hope it does really well.